So, Mark, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to be on the Woodiments vidcast and talk to us. It's really a pleasure and honor.
The honor is mine. Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm very honored to be here. Thank you.
And for those that don't know Mark Beecher, he's an exceptional drummer, educator, author, producer, and of course, the president of Nard, the National Association of Rudimental Drummers. So, Mark, tell us about yourself. I've been reading your biography. You have accomplished so many things. How and when did all this begin? And can you walk us through your career?
Sure, I'll just try to be as brief as possible. I started we have music programs in our public schools where I don't know how it is in Greece, but in elementary school, they give you forgot. Sorry. I'm sorry.
No problem.
Our car is in the shop, so just in case.
Unfortunately, here in Greece, we don't have music education.
Right. In music education, when I started in elementary school, we had. They give you a choice of instruments that you can take lessons, start private lessons with, and they ask you. I mean, they didn't offer the private lessons at the school, but they could recommend a teacher that you could start with. But they did have these. They did offer the students, the elementary school students. They called them flutophones. It was really a recorder. So it was a recorder, and it was a little plastic recorder, and it was nominal fee. It was like $1 that you had to pay for the flutophone, and then they taught you just the basics of notation and music.
And that's in elementary, correct?
That was in elementary school. Yeah, right. So that was the first introduction to music. As far as actually playing. Now, and at that point in elementary school, I really didn't have a desire for drums at that point. And I didn't really know, probably the only thing I did was I did a lot of drawing. I loved to draw. So I loved art. And so I did a lot of drawing. And it wasn't until probably later that I was interested. I noticed the drummers in a parade. So when I would see the drummers in the junior high school bands and then the high school bands in the parade, for some reason, seeing the drummers was exciting, more so than the other instruments. So I didn't really have before that. Yeah, I didn't have any interest in piano or violin or any other instrument, and they did try to. They did encourage students to. I know a lot of school systems now they get rid of. They've been stopping the music programs, which is really crazy. I don't know if it's that way in Greece, but in America a lot of schools have stopped their music programs, which is really dumb.
Well, in Greece we don't have anything to stop. I mean, there isn't any serious music education.
Really?
Not even in high school. So
wow.
there's nothing to stop here.
No, really? I mean, you don't even have like high school bands?
No, unfortunately.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, my word. Wow.
And this is one of the basic reasons that rudimental drumming and marching bands are not here as popular. I mean, it's not at all popular. We don't have marching bands here, and this is one big reason.
Right, but I mean the arts, which is interesting because the arts were very important in Greece, and
Yes.
as we know, I mean, look at all the artwork we have, and and the drum, the tambour, was I mean, in fact, women were the first drummers. Like if you read the Bible,
Yes.
The women were the first ones, were the first percussionists.
And in Greece, and in ancient Greece also.
Right. So, yeah, I mean, percussion was a part of the culture, and as was art. So yeah, it's interesting that I never knew that in Greece you don't have high school bands.
You have to go to private lessons and pay for private lessons, or you guys have to go to a music school, but in private.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. So and some schools do offer. There are some high schools in America that offer some lessons during school, which is nice. But yeah, but they have gotten, and it depends who's running in our country, who's running what administrations, the different presidents and their administrations, if they're for the arts or against the arts. So if they're for the arts, then they'll prevail. But if you have somebody that just cares about, they want to focus on the military but all the military, I mean, you have military bands, you know.
Yes, there are, I think there are 4 of them, and really rudimental drummers are like 3 or 4 people.
Wow.
I mean, their bands are amazing. They are very good bands, but in terms of rudimental drumming, as we know it, we are too far behind. I mean, they are very good percussionists. They have classical training,
right,
but not rudimental training.
Right, and what's interesting about that too is that, again, you know, this came out of the military. Like the classical percussion, the snare drum, came out of the military. So you know, so rudimental drumming, even the classical percussionists, they may be playing buzz rolls or press rolls, but still, the side drum came out of the military and the rudimental drumming. So you know. And I'm so glad that you're promoting rudimentals. It's really important, and maybe you'll start a renaissance in Greece. Hopefully, you know.
Hopefully, yes.
Yeah, to change this. So yeah, my hat's off to you.
Thank you very much. Because it is very crazy because we have here exceptional drum set players, exceptional orchestral percussionists, and traditional percussionists with traditional drums and follow-offs. But there is a huge gap in rudimental drumming.
Right.
I mean, it's like you know, it's going down like this.
Right.
High level of drum set players, orchestral players, 0 rudimental.
Right. Yeah. Well, you're going to change that. You're going to change that. Yeah. You're going to do that, my friend. But yeah, so at 10 years old, I was interested in the drum. Saw the drummers in the parades, and man, I really thought it's exciting. You know, hearing those drums, that you can feel it. You know, you can feel that. So then I didn't realize it, but my best friend Andrew Reamer, who we were best friends, you know, and we stayed. Well, we're still close. I mean, but as we got older, our lives. We had different focuses. Oh, well, I mean, we're still actually Andrew Reamer now is a principal percussionist with the Pittsburgh Symphony. So my best friend is now the principal percussionist with the Pittsburgh Symphony in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, here in the United States. But he and I were best friends. He was the best man at my wedding, and I studied with his father. His father, I didn't know. We were best friends playing together. And then one day, I had a drum. My father got me a drum, and he started playing these rudiments. I didn't know they were rudiments. I was like, wow, how'd you learn that? He said, well, my dad's a drummer. And here I found out that his dad was a national champion drummer.
Wow.
For 4-time United States national champion drummer. So and we live on the same block. And in fact, I still live here. I bought the house behind my mother's house. So I grew up in this block and played with all the kids in this area here, and then took lessons. I walked around the block, took lessons from my best friend's father. He taught drum corps. He taught all the national champion drum corps, national champion students. Andrew and I competed individually, and we won our first time out. We won a 2nd place medal for our first time out competing. So, and then, you know, I later got involved in playing in drum corps, drum and bugle corps, and played in the junior high school band, played in the high school band. And then while I was still in high school, I joined a drum and bugle corps the Brookhaven Crusaders, and then a lot of the members from that corps left. There were some internal administrative problems within that corps, but it was a Pennsylvania state champion drum and bugle corps. So we competed and did, we were with one of the top drum and bugle corps. But a lot of the people left that, including myself, and went to this other nearby drum corps, which was called Keystone Regiment. Before that, it was called the Tri-Community Cadets. Mm-hmm. But we all left Brookhaven and went to Keystone Regiment, and then they later became the Crossmen, very, very well known in championship drum and bugle corps. So I had my national champion teacher, William H. Reamer. I had him as my mentor, my teacher and mentor. And then I was playing in drum and bugle corps and the high school band. And I started playing in the marching bands in junior high school, middle school. But so I had from that period, and then later my drum teacher, William Reamer, he started a Fife and drum corps. Mm-hmm. So that was called the Independence Fife and Drum Corps, named after Independence Hall in Philadelphia, where our Declaration of Independence was signed, and where the Liberty Bell is, so it's all in Philadelphia. So I kind of grew up in a historical area here, Philadelphia, and then Valley Forge. George Washington brought all of his troops to Valley Forge, and they were encamped during the winter. It was a really a rough winter from December all through. They were there up until like June. And soldiers were dying of exposure to some of them didn't even have shoes. It was a terrible time. So they were encamped in this Valley Forge, which is only like 15 minutes from here. And George Washington called on drummers. I mean, the drummers were really important in our revolution, the revolution of our country here. Mm-hmm. So drummers played a really important part, and they couldn't do maneuvers or any important signals without the drummer. So there was a point where they were down in their numbers of drum, and George Washington put out a call to go. There's a drummer just 30 miles away. We need to get this drummer and bring him in to Valley Forge and have him here to help with the signaling and with the troops. So yeah, drummers were extremely important in the military, and still are, obviously, all over the world. The drummers are still important. So, but anyway, so I had that, and then I was teaching. Then I began teaching after. And my teacher, William Reamer, was teaching our high school drum section, and his sons were also played in the band. So then after he left, it was too much for him to teach the band and do everything else. So I took over teaching the drummers, the drum line in our high school band. I did that for 12 years at our Marple Newtown High School under the direction of Larry McGriff, who just passed away a couple of years ago. And he was another mentor for many of the students in the high school band. Many of the students became band directors and professional musicians playing in orchestras all over the world. And so I was very fortunate to grow up in this area here with William Reamer, who was a national champion and taught national champion students, and then a lot of music around here. And our high school was very much into the arts. So yeah, I feel bad when I hear about your situation in Greece, where, oh man, I don't know. Yeah, to be a minority like that is really, and try to. I don't know how you could get that into the school system. What would you do? Like, how would you be able to get that drumming like that into the school systems? Is that possible?
I mean, of course it is possible, but it's very hard work. We must convince first of all the art community here that drumming is important, because orchestral percussion is somewhat into the system, but drum set playing and especially rudimental playing is something that's off the system. So I think passing on the message and broadcasting videos and interviews like like yourselves and festivals and eventually creating marching bands so people can see, because I think it's very important, as you said, you watched a marching band
Right.
and you said, I want to learn drums. This is
Right.
very important to see
Right.
someone to play, and
Right.
this is missing here. So
Right. Right.
one of my main goals is to help create a basic drum course, and so they can evolve and
Right.
play outside on the streets, and people can see them, and
Right.
this way incorporate it in our culture. And
Right.
if this happens, then we will be able to talk to the ministries and have them in the schools. I think
Right.
that this is the only way, because it has to be in our tradition. I mean,
Right.
people hasn't seen marching bands.
Right.
I think
So
that if here in Greece people see marching bands, they will be their heads will explode. I mean,
so right so right now the only marching bands are in the military.
yeah.
So now what freedom do you have to create? Can you start your own marching band or corps, any kind of corps, drum corps?
Yes, of
Can you
course.
do you have that
Yes,
freedom to
we
do?
have the freedom to do anything we want.
Oh wow.
But
Okay.
the thing is that people must be trained in the art
Right.
form of rudimental drumming,
Right. Right. Right.
because I think it's a very different approach on the drum set. I mean,
Right.
drum set
Yeah.
players here they know the rudiments very well,
Hmm.
but they are not familiar with the aesthetics and the style of rudimental drumming,
Right.
or traditional, or whatever.
Right. And I think a lot of drummers don't realize that the drum set, which pretty much that whole control, they called it in America, they call it a contraption, and then for short they call it traps. So they didn't know what to call it, because one person is playing, one musician is playing bass drums, snare drums, cymbals. What do you call this? They called it a contraption. What's this contrap? And then they shortened it. So instead of contraption, they call it a trap set. And then they would refer to cowbells, wood blocks. They would refer to that as traps. But so yeah, then they would call that the trap drummer, or the trap set. That was the first. That was how they first identified that instrument, as the trap set, short for contraption.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, it was the drum line. It was one person as the drum line: bass drum, snare drum, cymbals. And a lot of people don't realize that it came out of the military. The main instruments, the bass drum, snare drum, and cymbals.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's where and these American companies like Ludwig. I'm an endorser for Ludwig drums. Ludwig was one of the first companies to market a trap set, with a bass drum, where you bought this set. And in England they call it a drum kit, but we called it a drum set, or trap set, for many years. It was only when the Beatles. I'm not quite sure when in England or Europe they referred to it as a drum kit. I'm not sure exactly when that terminology started, but I know that when the Beatles came over, everybody's calling it a drum set. If you look at all the catalogs, they didn't call it a drum kit; it was called drum set. And then when the Beatles came over, and these other English bands, they were referring to it as a drum kit. So it was very fashionable and chic to call it a drum kit now, because all the really cool British bands, rock bands, were referring to a drum kit. So then that's when, in the 60s, is when people started referring to it as a drum kit.
Very interesting.
But so yeah, it all came out of the military, So if you're playing a drum set, you're playing military drums. That same.
One other important thing I believe is that about 40 years ago we had a military coup here in Greece, which lasted about 7 years.
Oh, really?
And people really was discussed with military,
Oh, right.
And I think that this played a very important role of anything that sounded military.
Right.
They didn't want them. They didn't want
Right.
to hear it.
Right. Yeah, I can see that when you have a military coup, yeah, so then suddenly the government's taking over, the military's taking over as the government, and you probably feel very stifled in what you could do, right? Were you a part of, how long ago was that?
7 years.
I mean, how long ago was it?
It was from 67, I think, until 73, something like that.
Okay. Yeah, back in the 60s. So, yeah. So, well, yeah, I can, and that, so when people think of the military and a military band, they probably think, oh, they don't have good memories of it.
I mean, the sound of this marching thing, I think that it's still negative in our heads for some reason.
Right. Which is a shame.
Even though it's fading away, I think it's there in the background. But I think that now there are many wonderful percussionists in the Greek military, and the Navy also participated in some tattoos. So they are trying to bring this forward and really make a difference.
Right.
And I think that we can make it. We can make it because we have many talented people here.
Well, all it takes is somebody like you, and you're going to do it. And you are going to do it. And all it takes is one person. I mean, think of all the great things that have been done by one person to change history. So
hopefully,
yeah. And you have the support of all your comrades around the world. You know,
thank you very much.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So we're here to support you, and I'm anything you need from me to start a fife and drum corps or any kind of drum and bugle corps, I'm happy to give you all the information to get that and help you do that. We like I said, William Reamer, he started our Independence Fife and Drum Corps and from scratch, and I've started a lot of organizations from scratch. And if you have the will and the knowledge, you can do it. And as long as you have the freedom, which is good, because in a lot of countries, as we know, so unfortunately, a lot of people don't have that freedom to start an organization. So I'm glad you at least have the freedom in Greece to start an organization. So you'll make it happen.
Yeah. Apart from the coronavirus, which is now we can't assemble and play, which is happening all over the world. Otherwise, we have total freedom to do anything. Fortunately.
Right. Now, do you have a preference if you were going to start a marching group? Would you do a drum and bugle corps, or like maybe a fife and drum corps, or what do you see starting it as?
I think that most of the drum set players here are familiar with the American system of notation, and they somehow, everybody has played one of two solos of Wilcoxon.
Right.
They have it in their background somehow.
Right.
So I think that fife and drum would be appropriate.
I think fife and drum's pretty easy to get together, especially if you know any flautists, any flute players.
Yep.
Most of our fifers were. My wife and I met. I was teaching the drum line in our high school band, and my wife was a flautist in the band, and then she joined our fife and drum corps and learned to play the fife, and then she became a fife. She started teaching the fife. So it's easy for a flautist to become a fifer. So, and there are even some, you can even have flautists. You could have a flute and drum band too. So,
And yes, this is a great idea. We have many flute players here in Greece, in a very good level. And also, I want to incorporate Greek tradition too.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's very important because we have a very rich heritage here in Greece in music.
Yeah.
That goes back 1,000 years. So
you could even do that. What do you call the frame drum, sort of like the tambourine? What's the Greek word for?
There are many types of drums here, traditional drums. It depends on the area you are. We are fortunate to have many different flavors of music here in Greece, from Crete, then the southeast, which is Cretan music, up till the north, which is a Balkan style with 7/8, 11/8, 15/8, 16/8. It's crazy.
That's great.
So we have a very rich heritage. We can pick and fuse things.
Right, right.
I'm going to try to make people play together, because I think it's very important not only to play alone and study the rudiments, but it's very important to play with other people.
Right.
So one of the things I'm planning is the first rudimental open day, which is going to be on. We're going to play simple drum solos on the same time on different areas of Greece.
Oh wow, that's awesome. That's
And
great.
with the hope people to see many drummers together and bring on more to learn, because I think that if you see them play, it's very exciting. I mean, if you hear a drum play, you are like this. Wow, I want to learn.
Right, right, absolutely. So yeah, and so this is all fantastic, and it's great to see this happening. And I'm so glad that we met, and you know that you're
Of course,
getting this.
I'm glad
Yeah,
too.
yeah. And but to answer your question about the you know, getting into the rudimental drumming and American Nard and everything. Yeah, so learning for, you know, the thing about the rudiments in America. In fact, I'm writing a book with one of the. We have a drum group made up of former students of our teacher, William Reamer. He passed away in 2007. So we started out playing as just drum groups. Like we had several different versions of drum groups that we would that he put together, and we called it different names, but it was all of his students. And sometimes he would play with us, but we would go up to Connecticut, and you're familiar with the whole Connecticut style of drumming and American drumming, and so yeah, he got us started with that. And so we made up. So we have this current group called the Troublemakers, and we're all students, former students of Bill Reamer. And the one girl, Lily Middlebrooks, her son Tom, he graduated from Kutztown University as anthropology major. So we're writing a book called Three Camps, and it's gonna be the history of American rudimental drumming with its roots from Europe. So we're starting out with a history of drumming and
That would
percussion.
be great. Really, really looking forward to read it.
Yeah, thanks. It's pretty extensive research that we're doing, and with his background in anthropology, we've you know, gotten stuff from all. We have a section about Greece and you know how we're talking about, you know, the female drummers, percussionists, and how it all came from, you know, these early drums, and then gradually when the drums would have like two heads, two membranes instead of one, then you started getting in more into the side drum, this snare drum. So then that's when you start to see this, you know, then they put the snares on the bottom head, sometimes on the top for the tambour, and the tabor drum with the pipe. The pipe and tabor was very popular in Europe, especially in the British Isles. The pipe and tabor, one musician would be playing. It was like a one-man band. They'd be playing. Yeah, so they have the pipe in their left hand, playing the pipe, and then hitting the drum that would be strapped around their arm, playing that at the same time. So I mean, there was a lot. Yeah, it was pretty amazing. And there's still if you go to YouTube, you'll see, if you put in pipe and tabor, you'll see people that perform that style of music, and it's very interesting. And it sounds very middle age, has a very Renaissance middle age sound to it. So it sounds very stylistic of that period of music. But so yeah, we're doing that whole history. And you know, when you see how the drums progressed and rudimental drumming from Europe, starting with the military. You know, a lot of the influence was Germany and Swiss. This, of course, the Swiss rudiments. But it wasn't all Basel drumming. A lot of people associate the rudimental drumming in Europe with the Basel drummers, which is very important, and they still keep that tradition, the Fastnacht, which is coming up. I don't know. I don't know if they're going to. They didn't. I don't know if I don't think they're going to have Fastnacht this year.
I think it's going to be difficult due to the COVID.
Yeah, and even last year, you know, so which is a shame, you know, that all these that these years that they've had to pass that tradition, pass up on it. But anyway, so yeah, as that all came, that gradually worked its way, and I've collected all these drum manuals, which you can. A lot of these drum manuals are available online. Some, I mean, a lot of I've had to really search for and have had to find, just have copies made from different libraries. You know, I've had to pay the fee to have the copying of some of these manuals, and there are some that are very elusive that are hard to find, which is a shame. And like on our SEERD call the other day, Stu Warmington had been helping me try to find this drum manual from Britain that was a very popular manual and was the standard for rudimental drumming at that time, but nobody can find a copy of it. I mean, it did exist and it was, you know, important, but Stu said that the British they haven't been ones to really collect old manuals.
They don't care about history, I think.
Yeah, right, which is a shame, but you know, it's not really, I have to say, even in the United States, there are a lot of people in the United States that don't know their history. There are more people in Europe that know the American history than even Americans do. Like there's a big, like especially for the American Civil War, there's a huge population in Europe that is very interested in the American Civil War, and they have reenactment groups, and of course a lot of our rudimental systems came out of the Civil War. So, and the drumming, again, just like with the Revolutionary War in America, was very popular, and was very relied a lot on the drumming in America. That relied on the drummers for the military and their signaling. So that went on until probably about the early 1900s, when they started using bugles and then other forms of signaling, and then when electronics came.
For the people here in Greece, what are bugles?
What's that?
For the people here in Greece, can you explain to us what are the bugles?
Yeah. So their signaling. They had all kinds of signals for the military, even for eating, for dinner. You know, had a dinner call, then they had a church call, then they had the call to wake up the troops, which was reveille, and that's 3 camps. And it's very you'll find a lot of similarities in the style, because like our 3 camps that we play in America is very similar to the Tagwacht, they call it. Tagwacht, which is German, it would be day watch. So Tagwacht was the reveille in Switzerland. And that was, if you look at the reveille, and even in France, the reveille in France, it sounds all very similar. So, and in America, because we took it from Europe. So, and in America, during our revolution, George Washington and Ben Franklin, Ben Franklin did a lot of traveling. He was a very intelligent scientist, and he was one of the people involved in the revolution and getting together, signing for the Constitution. And he called on some of these generals from Europe. He called on General Lafayette from France, and then he called on General von Steuben, Baron von Steuben from. He was a Prussian a general soldier. So he brought in these Europeans. So they're bringing their knowledge of their signaling from Europe. So that's where and then where there were some of these manuals that were already in existence in Britain and France. And so they were bringing all that knowledge to America. And so with the French, and the French were very, there was a period at which I was really disgusted by. There was a period back in, during around the Gulf War era, when some of the nations weren't siding with us. They weren't allying with us for some of these battles. And one of them, France, didn't want to be a part of. So suddenly anything that had the name of France, they changed to freedom because they didn't want to honor the French. So like French, instead of French fries and hamburgers and French fries, instead of calling them French fries, they changed it to freedom fries. They didn't want to honor them. And it was like, wait a minute, don't you understand your history? The French people helped us forge our nation. The French were very instrumental in helping us to gain our independence from Britain, and so just to disavow any of that notoriety or honor to the French just because they didn't want to participate in some war, it's really crazy. Because the French, and they gave us a Statue of Liberty. The Statue of Liberty came from France. So it's like, wake up, America! The French and Europeans are really important and Germans in the forging of our nation. Well, later, we were at war with Germans, but we were at war with our own relatives in the Civil War. So that's the sad thing about wars, is that no war is good. And though some things like music, that's a good part of the military, but wars, there's no good war. All wars are bad, but and I have relatives all over the world, Germany and in the Netherlands and in the UK. So my roots are all in Europe. And my father was fighting against the Germans, and he's fighting against some of his own relatives. It's just sad. But so anyway, there's these signals that. So if you have a large group of people, soldiers, and they need to move, and you're out in a field, and you have a group of soldiers 1 mile away, how do you communicate with those soldiers 1 mile away and try to get them back to where your other group is? Well, at that time, they didn't have radios. They didn't have any electronics. So what way would you be able to do that? So the only thing that had any mechanics to it you'd be able to hear at a great distance were drums. And people were already using, Africans and many cultures were using drums as a means of communication for far distances. So
it was practical, of course.
Yeah, it's very practical. Yeah. So and at that point, when we were getting our military, the side drum had already been developed. So it had already been developed and was already being used by the Swiss mercenaries who were being hired by different militaries in other countries, because they were fierce fighters at the time, and they were very well organized. So they were well organized as fighters, and also their means of signaling with their fifes and drums. So even Napoleon even hired Swiss mercenaries to help fight his battles in France and all over the world. So and as those Swiss mercenaries were traveling around and playing and helping to give their signaling for their military, they were also picking up some different calls from other countries. So they were learning some of the signaling from the French. So when they were fighting for Napoleon, though Napoleon was relying on their signals, they were also picking up the signals from the French music, from French drummers and fifers. So yeah, so as they were going around, the Swiss were going around the world, they were picking, and then they were picking up things. They were the Crusades that were going into the Middle East. They were picking things up from different drums from the Arab countries. So from the Arabs, they're seeing their means of marching and using drums and cymbals. So they were so they started incorporating all that music and all those military signals into their. So then you had these Swiss drummers and fifers had all this knowledge. So they were collecting it all and using.
They were very vital to spreading the rudimental word, correct?
Exactly. So so it was just like a big circle. So as they were learning things, also the world was learning from the Swiss mercenaries, and which ended up influencing the military in the British Isles and France, and then when all those settlers came over to America, they were bringing all that knowledge that for the people that served in the military, they were like, oh, okay, well, if you want to all march this kind of step, then you use this drum call, this drum signal.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, the signaling for the folks in Greece, the signaling in the military was very important and vital for the survival of the military and in forging the different nations. Like unfortunately, the military was a part of, pretty much every country has some form of military, and and they need, even if you go to some of these indigenous parts of Africa, they have their warriors. They have warriors. And they have drum beatings. So sometimes the warriors would beat their shields. But because of that rhythm, for marching in step, now the Romans, a lot of people, if you watch a lot of some of these movies, you'll see the big Roman ships and you'll see a legion of Roman soldiers, and you'll hear a drum. Well, they didn't, oddly enough, the Romans did not use drums for marching. So there is that misconception, but you will see it in movies. So though it's in the movies, the Romans didn't use drums. A lot of them would just like sing. So they would like sing or recite as they were, so they would use their vocalizations as a means of staying in step, or beating on shields, or just the sound of their heavy, their clothing. Was very like metal clothing, and the heavy clothing, the metal would be, as they would move, would create a rhythm. So they would use that in unison as their means of staying in step. But pretty much for all other countries, the drums were important because of the distance of sending signals across a field, and the fifes and drums are important, and the signaling, all the separate signals were important for to retreat, to move forward. Like I said, my thing keeps getting stuck here. For moving forward, retreating. You needed some kind of signal, and because of the, or like I said, going to dinner. If you're in the camp, they call it the camp duty. The camp duty. The drummer would get out in the middle of the camp, and some of the camps were, depending on the amount of soldiers, was huge. So you have all those soldiers in the camp, and how do you get the message out to all the camp? Somebody playing a drum is a lot louder than somebody just shouting the order.
Of course.
And you can hear the drum. The voice will just carry just for a small distance. The drum can carry for miles. So and the fife too. The fife was also important. Nothing to take away from the fife.
Right.
But the drums are the oldest. Next to the voice, the percussion is the oldest instrument. So go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. So fast forward to Nard. Can you share us a little bit of historical background about the creation of Nard, and how did you get involved?
Yeah. Okay. And I'm sorry, I kind of skipped around.
No, it's okay. These are all very interesting. I mean, it's a huge ton of information.
Yeah, and so yeah, as we're talking about how everything came from Europe uh, and you know, France, Switzerland, and everything. I mean, we're influenced by everything. We're influenced by the Greek. I mean, wouldn't have our drums if we didn't have the drums from Israel, you know, Greece, and what the small frame drums they would have in Rome, and all this, and Africa, all this, all in the Middle East. It all plays a part in what we have fast forward to today, you know, the side drum, which got most of its foundation was in the Middle Ages, when the two-headed drum with a snare on it began to be was more prevalent, and you started to see more development of the side drum, and then with some of the and as some of these secular bands, orchestras were developing, they were taking these instruments from the military and some from culture too, from basic society, and incorporating them into their musical organizations. Then that's when you start to see more consistency. And then thanks to the European musicians, we have that rich history of the military. So as that came over to America, I have this story by George Lawrence Stone. I don't know if you're familiar. He came out with a very famous book, Stick Control. Which,
yes, of course.
Yeah, which a lot of drummers.
It's a Bible here in Greece, the stick control.
Yeah, exactly. All over the world. Stick control is one of the more.
And accents and rebounds.
Accents and rebounds, yeah. Which George Lawrence Stone actually, believe it or not, he wrote that in honor of Joe Morello.
Yeah, I know the story.
Yeah, Joe Morello was one of his students. So he wanted to dedicate, because he would come and Joe would come and he would ask Stone, hey, I'm kind of coming up with this idea of using these rudiments on the drum set. What do you think about this? And so he would show Stone these ideas he had for using the rudiments on the set, and Stone was very impressed, by this, and Morello was one of his prized students, and so he dedicated the accents and rebounds to Joe Morello. But anyway, George Lawrence Stone was one of the founders of Nard. And so what happened was, because of the military and all that influence, because there were, during the turn of the century, starting from the Civil War into the 1900s, you started to have a lot of veterans now. Okay, the veterans of the Revolutionary War, and all my relatives have fought. I have relatives that fought in the Revolutionary War, Civil War, World War I, World War II. So I have I have relatives that fought in every all the major wars and from the very beginning. But so then these organizations began to form for veterans. So you had the American Legion, and then you had the Veterans of Foreign Wars. Now these started up in the 1900s. So with these veteran organizations, there are a lot of veterans who played in the military bands. So and a lot of these, most of these, so many people. I don't know how it was in Greece, but you have a lot of these for the major wars, World War I, World War II. They were being drafted, and it was not volunteer. For many thousands of soldiers were being drafted. They didn't want to go to war, but they had to go. It's either that or leave the country and not fight in the war. But so you had to draft, and a lot of these musicians, a lot of these people, civilians didn't want to fight, but they had to go. They were drafted, so they had to go to war. So some chose to have, of those who had some musical talent, they would, some of them join the bands. And my teacher, William Reamer, he was in the Army band. He played in one of the Army bands. And so a lot of these drummers, you had all these veteran musicians, and they started these conventions. So there was this one convention in 1933, American Legion Convention in Chicago, where for the first time there happened to be a number of drummers who were friends, and while they were there at the convention, they decided we need to start a drumming organization. Yeah, we need to unite. Okay, we have the Veterans of Foreign Wars, we have the American Legion. Let's start, and then with that also, there began a lot of these organizations started drum and bugle corps, or Fife drum and bugle corps. So not only were the American Legion supporting veterans, but they also were supporting of these musical groups, marching groups that weren't then, a lot of them were just young people who weren't in the military. But because of their knowledge, serving in the military, they had the knowledge of all the signaling and the drum rudiments. So they would train these young people. So they started, and then there became, within the American Legion and VFW circles, they started having drum and bugle corps competitions. So with that, then they had drum solos, they had drum solo competitions. And later, after they started Nard, then Nard would sponsor some of these drumming competitions. So yeah, again, there you have the military supporting the starting of some of these drum and bugle corps for young people who weren't even in the military. So a lot of the drum and bugle corps have the names of their different posts, the American Legion post. So all around the country in America, we have different, like each town will have its own American Legion post or VFW post. It's like we have one that my father was a part of. He was a commander of our local town American Legion post, which I can walk to right up the street. Now they didn't have a fife and drum corps or drum bugle corps, but a lot of the big, well, our Broomall where we are, our American Legion post is very small. So, but some of the bigger American Legion posts and VFW posts, they had more money to start and fund some of these drum and bugle corps. So, but again, a lot of the names of some of these drum and bugle corps had the name of the American Legion post. So, like the one that my teacher was a part of was Archer Epler, which is like 15-minute drive from here. It's still there, and now that post is starting. They're actually starting one of the members there. He's starting a drum and bugle corps museum. It's actually, you can look at on their website. His name is Bill.
I want to check it out.
Yeah. His name is Bill Ives, Ives, Bill Ives. But he's starting a drum corps history museum. So he's collected uniforms, instruments, and all books and magazines, all from drum and bugle corps from the very beginning. It's really amazing. His collection is really extensive. So if you go online, he has this drum corps history museum. So and he's kind of traveling around with it somewhat, right? But most of it is based at this Archer Epler post. So the name of my drum teacher's drum corps was Archer Epler. So that was named after the American Legion post in Upper Darby, where it's located. So, So a lot of the drum corps had the names of the American Legion posts or VFW posts. And so that's how that all started. The drum corps started from the history of the military. But let me read you the story. I don't know how long we have here. I don't want to take up your time. I'm doing a lot of talking.
Don't worry about it.
I'll read you this is from George Lawrence Stone. Okay, this is the whole story of how Nard started in great detail. So it's not very long.
Okay.
Okay, so this is from George Lawrence Stone, one of the founders of Nard. This is the story. He says, An executive meeting of the National Association of Rudimental Drummers was held quite unexpectedly at the Stone Studio in Boston on August 11th, when Secretary William P. Ludwig, accompanied by President J. Burns Moore, dropped in on Vice President George Lawrence Stone for an informal visit. It had been planned that this trio would participate in a little vacation through Maine and up into Canada to help the secretary break in his new Cadillac car. Unfortunately for the vice president, business intervened at the last minute, thus preventing him from joining the party. However, that the one day together be not entire loss, the aforesaid meeting was suggested, took place, and after a not too exhausting discussion of Nard affairs, the entire gathering, all three, adjourned to a Boston eatery to partake of a New England fish dinner. To those who may not know, Nard started in Chicago in 1933. During an afternoon of the American Legion National Convention there, Bill Ludwig and Ludwig Drums, Bill Ludwig corralled a group of well-known rudimental drummers into the Lion and Healy store in Chicago. That's now a part of a college now, that building, where that building is. It's now a part of a university. But it was the Lion Healy store where they all met for an informal get-together. This was during the American Legion convention in Chicago in 1933. In addition to Bill Ludwig, there was J. Burns Moore. Now, J. Burns Moore was a famous drummer, Connecticut drummer, who started he was pretty much one of the first founders or innovators of this Connecticut style of rudimental drumming. You might hear about from like Jim Clark and Brendan Mason and Peter Mason and all these drummers. So Burns Moore was there. He said the dean of Connecticut drummers. Then there was Bill Kiefer, then of the Washington Marine Band. So Bill Kiefer was the drummer for the Marine Band, the official Marine Band. Bill Hammond and Heine Gerlach of Pittsburgh, Ed Strait, Roy Knapp, Harry Thompson, George Robertson, Bill Flowers, Joe Hathaway, Billy Miller, all of Chicago, and yours truly from Boston, yours truly being George Lawrence Stone.
Big names, correct?
They're all big names in drumming. They're all the top names in drumming. So, and they all happen to be veterans too, veterans of the American Legion veterans at this convention in 1930 in Chicago. Drums were provided. They had drums there. Drums were provided, and these individuals were persuaded with very little effort to sling the drums over their shoulders and show their wares individually. They would play individually, and they played, the little drum solos. And later, collectively, they all played together after that. When they all got together, the thunder of 13, there were 13 altogether, 13 big drums being pounded simultaneously, blocked traffic on Wabash Avenue and Jackson Boulevard. So that's where this Lion and Healy building was, at the corners of Wabash Avenue and Jackson Boulevard in Chicago. And people heard this noise. It's like, what's going on? So it stopped traffic. They heard all this drumming and almost caused a riot. The boys pounded away to the delight of all present except a few wives, who after 10 hours, they were there for 10 hours. Drumming. Wow. 4:30 in the afternoon till the next morning. They figured that matters had finally gone far enough and that they were willing to sell the whole thing then, and then for a sandwich, coffee, and some sleep. So they finally, okay, we need let's get something to eat and go to sleep. So it says, however, out of this meeting was born Nard. So out of this meeting, this one meeting at the American Legion Convention, 1933.
Wow. You mentioned 13 drums were sounded.
Yeah, right. There's 13 essential rudiment, and they had 13 drummers there. So it's kind of interesting that the 13 was, was a common number there. So So yeah, Nard was born out of that, and sole qualification for membership was the ability to drum the essential rudiments. So in the traditional manner, and its aims was to perpetuate these rudiments, standardize drumming, and further its interest generally. Rude and not mental, they said. not rude and not mental. So anyway, its members say of themselves deprecatingly, but seriously, they endeavor to represent the best in drumming, which they did. Membership in Nard cannot be bought. To join, this is what the terms were back then.
Mm-hmm.
To join, you must hunt up a member. You had to find an existing member of Nard. And drum the rudiments before him and open and closed and open. So yeah, you had to play open to closed. Open means slow, fast, slow. So
all the 13 rudiments you had to play.
All 13 rudiments you had to one by one, which should take about 1 minute, or maybe a minute or a little more to go from slow to fast to slow. It should take about a minute to do that for the 13 rudiments. So you had to be able to do that. Yeah, and they said slow to fast is like starting and ending with the sticks high above the head. So the where's my? Oh, here we go. Yeah, so the style was, you had to start like this. So when you're playing the roll, this was the starting position. Or if you were doing a paradiddle, like say a paradiddle, you would start the paradiddle. With the paradiddle is like it's like. So and then the rolls you start from here. So that's when they said high sticking, starting from high. That's how they meant for that. So, and then go ahead.
How did you get involved with Nard?
Yeah, so that's basically how it all started. And now the way I got involved, my teacher William Reamer was already a member of Nard. So all of his one day he said, okay. Well, we all wanted to be members of Nard. So there were about 4 of us that all gathered right up the street from where we live here. We all gathered in his cellar where we had, normally we started, our private lessons were on a drum pad, and he had this little room off the side of his house where we'd start out with our lessons. But then he later moved the drum lessons down to the cellar where he had a drum set, and then he had the drum pads and all of his drums were around. So he had us all gather in the cellar, like 4 of us, and one by one each one of us went through the rudiments while he judged us as we did it, and then we got our Nard membership. So I was a member of Nard from 1972. Up to 77 when it disbanded.
Why did it disband?
Yeah, Nard disbanded because it was Ludwig was sponsoring Nard. Ludwig was paying for it. Now it began for a while there. It wasn't too bad, but as the company grew, as Ludwig Drums grew, and also the membership in Nard grew, the two became too much for Ludwig. So they still wanted to focus on selling drums. Nard was just kind of a side thing, an extra. It helped to promote Ludwig Drums at the same time, but they really needed to focus on drums. So plus they didn't have they didn't have at that time, 1977, there was no internet. So what they had to send things out to every membership by mailing them. So they had to lick. And at that point, imagine licking the stamps for at that point almost 10,000 members.
Wow.
That's a lot of stamps to be licking and envelopes. So at that point they're like, this is taking too much time and money but so it disbanded. It wasn't together for all those years. Now I started a Nard up in 2008. So from 1977 to 2008, there was nothing for, then the other thing that happened was the Percussive Arts Society was gaining in notoriety and also in strength. and in finances. So their organization was growing, and it was just strictly an organization for drummers. Whereas Ludwig, Nard was for drummers, but their money was coming from Ludwig. Percussive Art Society was coming just from Percussive Art Society. So they started pushing their way into promoting, because there are a lot of, they had a marching percussion section in the Percussive Art Society. So they decided that maybe they should take over the promotion of the Rudiments, promoting the Rudiments. So after they disbanded in 77, Percussive Art Society got together in the early 1980s, and they got together at that point all the top rudimental drummers from drum corps and Fife and drum corps. And oddly enough, William Ludwig Jr. was a part of that committee. So yeah, I know, kind of like a traitor, but anyway, so they had all these drummers get together for Percussive Art Society, and they decided they wanted to update the rudiment list.
So they did the 40 standard, correct?
Right. Now, as far as Nard, I got involved in Nard. There was a point where you still heard Nard was still coming up in conversation. Like when I was in Nard, and being an endorser for Ludwig, I thought, well, maybe this is the time for Ludwig to get back into it. So I contacted my artist reps in Nard, and I said, hey, would you consider starting Nard up again? And they discussed it, and they said, no, we still don't. It's too much time. We still want to just sell drums. We don't want to worry about that. So I said, well, would you have a problem if I started up as an endorser for Ludwig? And they said no. So, and I was a member, and actually my drum teacher, William Reamer, there was a point where they were electing a new president for the company. And my William Reamer, my teacher, was one of the nominees. Now, he turned it down because he didn't have the time. He was getting more into making drums. So later in his life, he began to make drums for the Old Guard, for the Boston Symphony, the Philadelphia Orchestra, for the Army Band, the Marine Band. He was making drums and drumsticks. So he was too busy making drums and drumsticks. He didn't want to get involved in Nard. So, so at that point, they were like, yeah, go ahead, start it up. So I got all the information that I could. And I had a lot of all that I collected on Nard. So I had all that, and I spent about a year putting everything together, getting all the, digitizing all the original artwork for all the Ludwig. Now, all the original stuff was lost by the last outgoing president. So all the lists, the original lists of all the members was lost. So
literally lost, papers gone?
Yeah, well, they're somewhere, but nobody knows where it is. So I think somebody might know where it is, but they don't want to give it up for whatever reason. So, but anyway, I've been able to slowly put it together as former members come to me. I have my list of all, which includes some of the old members. So as we go along, now people will come to me and say, well, I lost my number. What do we do? Well, I give them a new number and just say, well, do you remember what year you became a member? So I'll put that on the certificate. Original exam was in 1960, and sometimes they'll remember who their examining judge was. Sometimes they won't. But so I'll put what information I can on their certificate, so that's basically how I got back involved with Nard and started up. But it took a year of collecting all this information, and digitizing everything. But it's all that I have is everything that was originally, even the little pin, the cloisonne pin that you get. That all was based on the original. I still have my original pin, so it's actually the one that I give out now is actually a little bigger, but it's the exact same design, and it's actually even better. So it's even they're made in China, but the quality is unbelievable. I mean, it's so precise. They took the original design and and made it even more precise. So it's anyway,
This
all the
pin,
product.
this pin goes to every member, correct? And I wanted to ask you how someone can be a member of a NARD. Does he have to get into an exam?
Yeah, well, I mean, we have some honorary members who, because of their experience and the influence they've had in rudimental drumming, you know, I'll present an honorary membership to some members.
Mhm.
But the basic means for joining is still the same as it was. I haven't changed that at all. It's you take an exam with an existing member, if you know one. If you don't, well, now with COVID, because of COVID, I pretty much have been performing the exams online, so they can just contact me, mbdrums@aol.com, and we'll just do an exam on Zoom.
What do they have to show you? They have to show you how they're playing the rudiments?
Right. They just go through the 13 essential rudiments and play a short solo, and that's it. Short drum solo, and it's $25 for the membership, and that you know, you get some stickers, you get a bumper sticker, you get the pin, the cloisonne pin, you get a button, you'll get the certificate, you'll get a laminated membership card. The original ones weren't laminated that they hand out. So I mean, you really get more now than you did as a member when I was first in Nard.
What are the benefits of someone becoming a member of Nard? Why should he be a member of Nard?
Yeah, right. Excuse me.
Bless you.
Sorry, the sun's coming in here. Well, I mean, the benefit of, as it was for us, because there weren't that many now there's other drumming organizations, there's PAS, but you don't have to become a member of PAS. All you have to do is pay $100, you know. I'm also a member of the Grammys, the Recording Academy. Now for that, you have to have a certain amount of songs on iTunes or Spotify. So you have to have at least 12 tracks of yourself playing. It doesn't have to be your own albums. It can be on other people's music, but you have to first prove that you're on that, and you have to see that on a site called All Music. So the Grammys, the Recording Academy goes to the allmusic.com website, and they look to see if your name is on there and your credits. So you have to get those credits to the now it's TiVo. It used to be just allmusic.com, but now TiVo, which made the recorder, the TiVo recorder, they now have that company now does All Music. But so you have to get it to TiVo, and it takes months for them to get to it. But yeah, so you have to first be. It's not just, you don't just pay for it. You have to show that I've been on 12 recordings that are in distribution. You know, that you pay for it. So, and the same thing with Nard. You know, it's like, this is probably one of the things that's a little different from the other drumming organizations, even USARD. To become a member, you have to play and show that you can play the rudiments before an existing member of Nard. So that's the one difference, you know. And there have been a few times where, maybe one of the drummers wasn't playing. There are a couple of rudiments I find sometimes are consistent with drummers that they maybe are playing it the way it was written. One of them is the flamecue. You know, sometimes people will play it. They'll play the flamecue, like instead of playing the flamecue, which should be played, they'll play. I'm like, that's not a flamecue. So you know, I'll say now go. Here's how it's supposed to be played.
So it is very important to have the aesthetics for it, correct? So
right, yeah.
Not just play the notes.
No, yeah, right. So you have to play it properly, and like even you'll notice a lot of drummers, even in drum corps, will play the paradiddle, but the paradiddle is played with an accent. But a lot of people play the paradiddle all even. That's not how, you know, the paradiddle was meant, those accents were meant to be played because to keep people in step. Right, so without the accent, if I'm playing it, how can you keep step with that? You wouldn't know how to march to that. But with the accent, you can feel that. You can just be a snare drummer and keep a line of soldiers in step with. Right, left, right. You know what I mean? But if you're playing it,
nobody marches like this.
That'd be like right, left, right. So, and then the flamingcue. Now, if you're playing it, that doesn't have the same feel as.
It's a completely different thing.
Yeah, and there's a whole theory behind the flamingcue that was developed. They think that this guy, this soldier who was in the military, who was one of the teachers, that he was the one who developed this flamingcue because of its syncopation. They think he was a African American, maybe even mixed, not totally African American, but might have been part African American. But he helped develop this syncopation, because before that everything is right. Everything is pretty much, when you have the accent is on the 2nd 16th note, that creates syncopation. So that's when you listen to even like even some of the early jazz drumming, you hear that. That is the flamingcue. So yeah, and that's where, you know, we were talking about the rudiments with the drum set. Well, yeah. that's where you know you're getting that syncopation. So and the guy's name was Juba Clark, the teacher, Juba Clark, and he taught Dan Emmett. And Bruce and Emmett, that's one of the famous drum manuals of the Civil War. Yeah. Well, Dan Emmett also wrote Dixie. He wrote the famous tune Dixie. Now, the only thing that the history about Dan Emmett that we don't like is that he was involved in he participated in blackface entertainment, where it was a derogatory means of imitating black people, African Americans. So, and they called them minstrels, and they were white people that would paint their faces black to look like black people, and they were imitating black people very stereotypically, and it's a very disgusting part of our. But unfortunately, Dan Emmett was in the minstrel entertainment, so they even there was even a famous movie called Dixie that had Bing Crosby, a very famous actor, Bing Crosby, who was, you know, a great singer, but he played Dan Emmett in this movie Dixie. Well, this movie Dixie now, like, you can't get it on, they don't allow it to be produced on DVD, because now you can see it on YouTube. I think there are some, but because of that minstrel history, and in the movie they show they show Bing Crosby in blackface. So, you know, that's not good. You know, that we have, you know, especially with this Black Lives Matter movement, it's important that we honor what the African Americans have brought to our music culture, especially in America, which has gone through, even in Africa, they're playing music that African Americans developed, jazz, blues, rhythm and blues. Africans are playing that our American music that the African slaves developed. It's like we were talking about the big circle, like the Swiss drummers, and it's the same thing. So at least the African Americans brought the world something really out of that bad situation.
Yes.
At least we have something good. So anyway, that flamicue.
If someone wants to learn the rudiments correctly,
Yeah.
is there a certain process? I'm talking now to Mark Beecher, the educator, because I know you are a professor of percussion and director of the
Right.
percussion ensemble in Drexel University, and
Right.
you have taught many drum lines in
Right.
high
Right.
schools.
Right.
So, what is the correct way of someone to get him into rudimental drumming? I mean,
Right.
does he have to study certain books?
Yeah. Yeah.
What is the process?
Yeah. I think we have now. Thank God we've. I mean, I thank the Lord for the gift of music. I mean, we wouldn't have this without the knowledge of this. Having the where does knowledge come from? Science can't answer. Where does information come from? DNA. Okay, DNA is information. It's a code.
Mm-hmm.
You don't get code out of nothing. Science says, oh, all the this intricate skeleton and all the we're talking about the COVID. When you look at that RNA, how it replicates, it comes from a code. How does this know? Things that the chances of something just randomly happening is impossible. It's like 10 to the trillionth. Yeah, it's impossible that it would all just. You're talking about information, okay? Where does language? Apes don't have the language that we have. They don't have. Have you seen an ape fly an airplane? I haven't seen an ape fly an airplane. They've tried to communicate. They'll teach ape sign language, but apes don't do sign language on their own. They can teach a chicken to do tic-tac-toe and beat a human. If you go on YouTube, they have these arcades. They used to have been. I don't think they have them anymore because it was animal cruelty. But they would have a chicken in a little box, and the chicken would learn how to do tic-tac-toe. I don't know if you know what tic-tac-toe is. Yeah. Well, the chicken would beat a human at tic-tac-toe in order to get food. So, I mean, you're talking about people say the chickens are dumb. Well, it can beat a human at tic-tac-toe. So you can teach a horse to count. You can teach a chicken, but you can't teach a chicken. You can't teach an ape to fly a plane. Okay, humans, this knowledge is incredible. So, we have all this knowledge, and it's important. But now we have the ability to access this online. We have YouTube. So instead of just books now, we have videos we can watch. So
I know you have published a DVD, correct? With rudimental drumming.
Yeah, right. I have a DVD. It's a history of rudimental drumming. It's called The Art of Ancient Rudimental Drumming. I try. It's kind of like a concise a presentation on drumming from the Middle Ages up through contemporary times, and I have different uniforms for the different. I have like a middle age uniform and a big.
Yeah, I've seen some clips on your channel. They are amazing.
Right. Well, thank you. But excuse me. So, So. Now, the first thing you want to do is make sure you get the proper training, because there's a lot out there. Okay, there's a lot of stuff. There's good and bad. The good. I play New York a lot. Well, not because of COVID this year, but I'm up in New York. I'm all over, and just because you live in New York doesn't mean you're going to be or you live in Los Angeles doesn't mean you're going to instantly become a big star. There's good and bad bands in New York. Doesn't matter if you live. But, you have to have the right training, you have the right teacher. So it's important, if you're going to study rudimental drumming, you want to get somebody who has had the training in, hopefully in a top drum corps or Fife and drum corps. And, we can get you that. You and I know all the best teachers and drummers, rudimental drummers from all over the world. So we can do it on Zoom. You and I met. I wouldn't, how else would I know you? It's like,
exactly.
That's the amazing thing about all this. It's incredible. So there's no reason why anybody can't be a great rudimental drummer. We have but like I said, you can go on and see somebody playing the paradiddle with no accents. I don't want to learn the rudiments from that person. Okay. I want to learn from somebody who's knows, like the Connecticut style, or like you're learning, you're learning all this stuff, all this great rudimental stuff in Greece. So you're probably one of the only drummers in Greece that knows rudimental drumming like you do, right? Who else?
We have a few players here that are really into rudimental drumming, but I have the privilege of talking to people like you and get to know how tradition flows through your playing. I think it's very important to know the history and the background.
Right.
And that's why I'm very happy to talk to you today.
Yeah, absolutely. And so you can contact me. We can do a Zoom lesson. I do private lessons too, or please, any drummers in Greece, go to Alexander. Please, anybody, any of us drummers, any of us in our core, any of the people in Seared, or for if you want to learn if you want to learn Scottish pipe band drumming, or I also play I play in a Scottish pipe band.
Do you? Yeah.
Yeah, so I've had the fortune of playing in every form of military drumming: Scottish, Swiss drumming, American drum.
What is your favorite?
I love it all, really. I have to say I love it all. It's all great. Each one has its great, now the Scottish drumming is a little more reliant on buzz rolls, so the focus is a little more. So you have to learn to play a buzz roll. But now they're playing a little more open now than they were like back in the 80s and 90s, where it was pretty much all like buzz roll oriented. But really, even if you take Scottish drumming, pipe band drumming, they were playing on rope drums before 1930. So they weren't playing on modern drums. They were playing on rope tension drums. So they weren't doing buzz rolls they were doing double stroke roll. The first drummers playing with pipe.
It's very difficult to do buzz rolls on a
on a rope drum.
Right. Correct?
Yeah, right, yeah. Yeah, I mean you can do it, but yeah, it's because of the gut snares on the gut snares are it's harder to it really actually brings out more of the individual strokes, whereas with the wire snares, like on a concert drum, it lends more. It's not as maybe as articulate unless you tighten the snares. If you start to tighten the snares, then you can start to hear more of the individual strokes. But yeah, it's easier to buzz on a snare drum, concert snare drum, when you loosen the snares. So yeah, but whereas with the rope tension drum, with the gut snares, it's a lot harder to do that because the gut snares are a lot louder, and yeah, you have to really. I mean, you can do it, but it's easier on a concert drum than it is on a rope tension drum for a buzz. So anyway, I hope I'm answering your question.
Yes, of course.
Go ahead.
So sorry. Go ahead, please.
Oh, well, what I was going to say was just a kind of a real quick note about where the rudiments, why the 26 rudiments were standardized. I know that's one of your questions.
Yes.
The reason why it was standardized because at that point in 1933, there were really no standardized list of rudiments. So, I mean, now you did have, now later, Dr. Fritz R. Berger in Basel, he came out with his book on Swiss Basel drumming. Now that came after Nard. So he actually became an honorary member of Nard, and he contributed a solo to the Nard book. So if you get the first Nard book, you'll see the solo by Fritz R. Berger in there. But at that point, Nard had already developed their list of rudiments. So, the Swiss Berger's book came out after Nard. So Nard was one of the first drumming organizations, and a lot of even other drumming organizations and even other drum companies like Slingerland, they pretty much adopted the Nard list. So now they wouldn't say it like because Ludwig had sponsored Nard, Slingerland put out a list of the 26 rudiments.
Yeah, I didn't know this.
Yeah, but they didn't mention Nard. You know, they just say the 26. They just said the 26 standard rudiments. So, but then now it was developed. Yeah, they wanted to have a system for drummers.
Why it is important to have a standardized list? I mean, what is the need for something like this?
Well, I mean, we were talking about this in Seared, and I think it's important that we even bring all our drummers together from all over the world. And now we're trying to publish a book, a second Nard book, and now I'm really toying with the idea of bringing in more of the not that didn't have that option to begin with, but I would really like to even bring in more drummers from around the world to put their solos in this book, so drummers in America and the world can see, start to familiarize themselves with drumming from around the world. And the fact that Fritz Berger put his solo in the Nard book introduced America to Swiss drumming. That was the first time that American drummers saw a written piece by a Swiss drummer and in Swiss notation. So now I know a lot of now I'm sure you write when you write drum music. Now do you use the 5-bar? You use the 5-line staff?
The American style.
Yeah, American style. See, now in France and Switzerland they have the monolinear style with right and left, and the Scottish do the same thing. You know, so it's a monolinear style. But yeah, I'd like to see it. I'd like to bring in solos from around the world in their style, you know, in their written style. So, you know, I welcome you to invite you to contribute a solo.
I would be happy to contribute. I have many solos in odd meters.
Oh, that's great! Please, please. No, I love it. So yeah, we'll publish them all. And
thank you for the honor. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for the honor. And so anyway, so the list of 26 rudiments came from these different books that were already in existence. There's the Charles Stewart Ashworth book that was written in 1812. Now, Charles Stewart Ashworth was the drum major for the Marine Band at the time. So, and he had a background. He was born in England. So he came from England to the United States. So he already knew how they wrote rudiments in Britain. So his book is written in like the British style with right and left above and below the lines. So, but yet there was another book by Sam L. Potter, another British drummer. His was on the regular 5-line staff. So you did have someone like monolinear, then you also had the ones on a regular music notation. But so as you had the Ashworth book, then you also had the Bruce and Emmett book from the Civil War. That was 1861. So you had Charles Stewart Ashworth book, 1812. You had Bruce and Emmett from 1861. Then you had Gardner A. Strube, another Civil War book. That was 1869, although the Civil War was over by 65. But he was around during the Civil War, so he was bringing all his knowledge of rudiments from the Civil War. So we still kind of include Gardner Strube's book as a part of the Civil War manuals. So the Ashworth, Bruce and Emmett, Gardner Strube. Then we have John Philip Souza, who was a very popular. He was a Marine Band conductor, and he wrote "The Stars and Stripes Forever." John Philip Souza, music composer and marching music conductor and composer, and he put out a book on bugles and drumming, signals and rudiments. So they had Ashworth, Bruce and Emmett from the Civil War, Gardner Strube from the Civil War. John Philip Souza was 1886. Then there was also Sanford Muller. Now we've heard the Muller technique, and I don't know how much you know about Sanford Muller, but
he's very popular here in Greece. His style is very popular among drum set players.
Right, exactly. And in fact, it's kind of taken on its own thing. It's kind of its own thing now, even a little different from the way Muller originally described it and played it. Yeah. So it's kind of come out more so because of Jojo Mayer, who's a great drummer. I have all of his DVDs. I've never met him, but he is a great drummer. And he's kind of come up with, when people want to learn about Muller style, a lot of people will reference Jojo Mayer. But really, Muller style was not exactly the way people are doing the Muller technique now. Although a very famous jazz drummer and teacher, Jim Chapin, he was a student of Sanford Muller, as was Gene Krupa. I don't know if you know the name Gene Krupa. Yeah, one of the early pioneers of the drum set, and one of Buddy Rich's contemporaries. And even Buddy Rich put out it really wasn't Buddy Rich who put the book out. They just put his name to it. And he did a few pictures where he was sitting behind the drum set. Yeah, but Buddy really didn't write the book. It was written by Henry Adler. He was a popular teacher, and he put out the book. But at the time, Buddy Rich was playing with Tommy Dorsey, and Gene Krupa had already come out with a book, playing a book on rudiments and drumming, and it was based off of his. Gene Krupa was a student of Sanford Muller, so pretty much Gene Krupa's book is pretty much almost like a Muller book, although Muller's book is more rudiments. Gene Krupa starts out with the rudiments, but then the rest of it's all jazz drumming. But so, and at the time, Gene Krupa was playing with Benny Goodman. So there were a lot of sort of competition between all the big bands. There was like Benny Goodman's band. And then there was Tommy Dorsey band. There was Duke Ellington, and there was Chick Webb, who was a drummer. He had led his own band with Ella Fitzgerald singing, and so Tommy Dorsey was like, "Well, buddy, Gene Krupa has a book out. Well, you should have a book." So Buddy didn't read music. He was self-taught. I mean, he was a child star. He was playing drums on stage with his parents at 18 months old. Imagine a little tiny 18-month, only a little over a year old, on stage playing drums. So he was already a well-known musician at 1 year old.
Yeah.
2 years old, he's already a star playing drums. So by the time he was in Tommy Dorsey's band, he's like 18, 20 years old, and he's already been playing drums professionally for 20 years. Whereas like Gene Krupa maybe was doing it professionally for 5. But Tommy Dorsey was like, well, he wanted to promote his band. So he's like, Buddy, you need to come out with it. So Buddy didn't know how to read music. So they knew this teacher, guy Henry Adler, who was a famous teacher, and he'd written some books. So let's go to him, and he'll help you we'll just put your name on it. Yeah, so they took a couple pictures of Buddy, with his sticks. But he really didn't write the book. But it's it was still a book on rudiments, and there's a couple rudiments in there that are there's like an 8-stroke roll in there. And so anyway, so there's the Muller book, and then there was another book, J.M. Flockton, Rudiments. That was from 1897. So there was Ashworth, Bruce and Emmett, Strube, John Philip Souza, the Muller book, and Flockton. So you had 6 books, manuals that Nard used for their reference for putting together. And almost all of those books all had 26 of the rudiments that were part of the Nard licks were all those rudiments were in these 6 books.
Understood. Are you thinking of expanding this list as time goes by?
Yeah.
How do you think Nard in the modern rudimental era? Does it evolve?
Yeah. So this is what I'm thinking. Now, they actually, believe it or not, they had actually talked about this right before Nard had folded.
Mm-hmm.
They actually had talked about updating the list for Nard.
Mm-hmm.
Now, just for the sake of history, I will keep the original Nard list. So what I'd like to do is also include. My wife is a graphic artist. That's what she does for a living,
Mm-hmm.
and she's also does websites, and she created her own website. And I want to update the Nard site, so it's going to look a lot more contemporary. And but I'm going to keep everything. To become a member, it's still going to be the same 13 rudiments,
Mm-hmm.
and we're still going to keep those 26 rudiments intact. Okay, as part of history, and because those are still, even all the hybrid rudiments all come from the 26 rudiments.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and if you look at even the rudiments, the Swiss rudiments, there's only a few that are a little different, like the tap flam, the double,
Mm-hmm.
or the final of 7.
Yeah.
Okay, but still within the final of 7 is the 5-stroke roll. So they call it the final of 7 because it's usually at the end, the final part of a phrase.
Yep. Correct.
So yeah, sorry. So it's the final of 7 strokes. So it's a 5-stroke roll with 2 extra beats. So that's so we're giving you the 7, but still the 5-stroke roll is still in there. The double, the tap flam is still flam still there, you know. So all the rudiments in these other rudiments are still in the 26 rudiments. So there's really no reason to change the 26 rudiments. But I want to have an extra. I'm going to add on the new website an extra page that will have all the hybrid rudiments. So if you want to start experimenting with the hybrid rudiments, you can do that. And I was actually, I'd like to say that I was part of the creation of some of the hybrid rudiments back in my drum and bugle corps days, back in the 70s, in between competitions and during rehearsals, we would get together, some of us drummers, especially this one drummer, Tom Hannum, he's in the Drum Corps Hall of Fame, as is my teacher, William Reamer. He's in the Drum Corps Hall of Fame. But Tom Hannum became a very famous drum corps teacher, and we played in the 2 drum corps, Brookhaven Crusaders and Keystone Regiment, which became the Crossmen. So, and then he kept playing with the Crossmen. And after that, he went to Westchester University here, which is 30 minutes from, and he got a degree in music at Westchester, and then he went on to teach a lot of famous drum and bugle corps. He taught the cadets. He also, have you ever seen the DVD of a show? It was kind of like a Broadway show. It was called Blast. Have you seen that?
No, unfortunately, no.
Yeah. Go onto YouTube and put in Blast, BLAST, with a shout at the end, Blast.
Okay.
It was like drum corps on Broadway. So, and it was sort of like, and you're probably familiar with Stomp. Have you seen the Stomp Broadway?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's kind of like drum corps meets Stomp.
Okay.
So,
very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's what they took a alumni of this one drum corps, the Star of Indiana, and other drum corps people who had aged out of. In drum corps, you can play in junior drum corps. You can play up until you're 21.
Yeah.
And after 21, you can't play in junior. Now, see, they have senior corps, DCA. There's DCI and DCA. DCI is for junior corps up to 21.
Mm-hmm.
DCA, you can be any age. So you can be 70 years old, 80 years old, and still playing drum corps. But
it is a different style from traditional.
It used to be that where DCI, they were a little more innovative, and DCA was kind of the older members. So they were, but now you have young people in DCA just as you do in DCI, and you can continue forever in DCA. Whereas now there are some people who play DCI and DCA, or go from one to the other. But right now it's even. They're all playing the same rudiments, and but anyway, so yeah. So as we're going to add the hybrid rudiments as a separate page, but we're still going to keep the 26 because they are still, in order to play in order to play any of the hybrid rudiments or the cheese rudiments, you've heard of cheese, which is a flam and a diddle, that's cheese. We would sit around. I would continue this short story. Tom Hannon and I would sit around, and we would challenge each other with playing different, trying to take a standard 26 rudiment like a paradiddle and add things to it. Hey, let's try this. Well, I would teach my students, and then he was teaching the drum corps students some of the drum corps drum lines. He would teach them some of these innovations. So it started catching on and then growing. And those drummers would add difficulty to those rudiments. So to what had become the hybrid rudiments that you're finding in.
And I think there are too many, correct? There are too many hybrid out there.
What's that?
There are too many. I think the number of hybrid rudiments is huge. I think huge. Hundreds or something.
Like about 126. There's about 126 of them right now, and they keep going. You can keep adding to it. But so I was kind of a part of that in the start of the creation of the hybrid rudiment system, and not that it was an actual system, and nobody was. So some like the PAS started putting out a list of what some of their the hybrid rudiments were that was going around the drum circles, and then the 40 rudiment international rudiment list that the PS put out, they started adding some of the Swiss rudiments, the tap flam, and the they call it the windmill stroke. It was really the mill wheel stroke is the mill stroke or the mill wheel stroke. They call it the windmill stroke. That was the only thing. Now, the only thing I wasn't crazy about with the 40 rudiments of the PAS was that they were changing the names of some of the rudiments. So, and people were confused because you still had the Nard list, and you had to sing. You had the rough, and then and you go to the PAS list. It's called the drag. Well, so now, and there's a lot of that.
But there is a lot of confusion about roughs.
Right. So there are some manuals.
Is it single stroke or is it
right?
What is it?
Right. So there's so many different explanations about it, but that's why if you learn the history and get as many of the old manuals as possible that you can, it all will make sense to you. Then there's no confusion. So you'll see the history. And if you go to beafifer.com, that's BEAFIFER.com, Be a Fifer. My Fifer friend Ed Boyle, who played he helped found our Independence Fife and Drum Corps with Bill Reamer. He has a website devoted to fifing, and then he sells my DVD, and he also sells all these old drum manuals. So for like about $15 each, for each manual, you can get these old manuals, and some of them are even online. So, I can tell people, if you contact me, I can give you some of the links to some of these old manuals. You can get the Bruce and Emmett online.
Yeah.
You can even get the Stroob. The Stroob is online. The Bruce and Emmett's online. The Ashworth is online. So a lot of these you can get online, but Ed Boyle sells them all, and he painstakingly took all this time to digitize these old manuals and cleaned them up so that they look like brand new, and they're great. So beafifer.com, he has my DVD, he has all the list of all these manuals that you can buy. So you can get all these and learn about rudimental drumming.
Great.
History.
Mark, time really flew. I mean, I could talk to you for another 2 hours and another 4 hours. You are a very significant part of rudimental drumming.
Oh, thank you so much.
You are doing a terrific job. and I'm waiting for the next projects you mentioned to come out.
Yeah, yes, and yeah, I mean, you and I, we're all going to stay together, and yeah, please send in your solos, what solos you liked for our this book, and the work we're doing with Seared, with Ollie Fisher and Mark Raleigh and all the great drummers, Stu Warmington and you, and yeah, I mean, it's a great thing that all these drummers are coming together, and we're gonna, hopefully, bring rudimental drumming into a new era here, and into the, especially for you. I feel so bad that you've had to, haven't had the opportunities to play like so many of us have had here. That
but fortunately, I think in the future we can meet in person and play together.
Yes.
And so I can have the opportunity of play with you guys and have all this experience.
Yes,
with such a huge players like you.
Oh no, and we'll help you however get this stuff going. Fife and Drum Corps in Greece or whatever. We'll all help you band together and help you get that together. So
great, thank you. I'm sure that people here in Greece will enjoy this interview, and I'm sure we'll talk about in the future again because you have so much information to give out.
Yeah, well, there was a lot that I wanted to talk about. It's like, oh man, I didn't talk about that. But
is there something? Is there something you want to add before we close?
Oh, I mean, thank you so much, Alexander, for all you're doing. I thank you to and to the Seared and all the members of Nard. Thank you for supporting Nard and
it's my honor, really.
Yeah, I mean, you're a member of Nard, and thank you everybody to all my friends in Greece and all over the world. And I want to thank my wife Connie and my son Nick and his wife Grace, and to all my troublemakers, my group, the troublemakers, our group. It's Steve Gillespie, who was in the Old Guard Fife and Drum Corps. He was a section leader actually for the Old Guard, for the drum section. He's in our group. Lily Boddick Middlebrooks, snare drummer, and Steve Kirkpatrick, snare drummer, and Tom Lily's son Tom is our bass drummer, and he's the one working with me on the book, 3 Camps. To Mark Riley, he and I have done a lot, and to our friends in Connecticut, Jim Clark and Cliff Barrows, and Peter and Brendan Mason. They're a great group. All the Connecticut drummers. I thank all them, and I mentioned Bill Reamer, my late teacher, William H. Reamer, and thank you. Some of this drum set drummer, my friends, Peter Erskine, who we work with. My wife and I do graphics for his label.
Yeah, I've read it in your bio. You've done 2 albums, graphics for 2 albums.
Yeah, we did 2 Grammy Award, 2 Grammy nominated albums on his label, Fuzzy Music, which is pretty unheard of. That his own independent label, Grammy nominated. He had in the same year he had 2 albums that we did the graphics on, and I'm a member of the Grammys Recording Academy, and part of that, and just to all the bands I play in, Sharon Katz and the Peace Train, and Lázaro Herrera with Synthesis, a Latin band, and just so much. I'm just very, very grateful to the Lord for everything, and just the ability to do all this online. So I hope you and I can meet in person.
Yes, of course.
I'd love to go to Greece, and
you are invited. You are officially invited in Greece. I would be very happy to have you here and meet you with and have you acquainted with the drumming community here, and so they get to know you. And
I love it. I'm sorry, not one other drummer, a great drummer, but if nobody's heard of him, Jay Belrose. I was just talking with my friend Jay the other day. We're talking. Jay's played with Robert Plant from Led Zeppelin. Robert, he did a tour with Robert Plant and Robert Plant and brother, what's her name? Bluegrass player. Anyway, but he played with Elton John. He's played with everybody, and he's a Grammy Award-winning drummer. But Jay is very much into the old style drumming. Like his one of his big influences was Chick Webb. If you haven't heard Chick Webb, listen to Chick Webb. His stuff was Gene Krupa. They did a competition between it was Benny Goodman and Chick Webb's band. It was a battle of the bands. Everybody says that Chick Webb's band won, and Gene Krupa got down and he was bowing to Chick Webb. But yeah, Chick Webb was a little tiny guy. He had a deformity, but he was a giant of a player. So if you haven't heard of Chick Webb, check out Chick Webb's playing. Yeah, but Jay Belrose is a great drummer. But yeah, we played together at a couple times, and we've remained friends all these. And whenever he comes to town, he always calls me up and say, "Oh, here's some backstage passes, and come meet us after the show." And
great.
But anyway, so that's thanks again. I'm sorry for taking all the time.
No. I really enjoyed hearing you with all this information and all your experience and the historical background. I mean, it's an eye-opener for me, and I'm sure an eye-opener for all the people here. And I'm really looking forward to meet you in person and have this again and continue our conversation.
Absolutely.
For the second round.
Absolutely. I'll be happy to do it anytime.
All right, Mark. So thank you very much again. It was an honor.
It was my honor, Alexander. Thank you.
And talk to you soon.
Okay. God bless.
God bless. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.